there's a side to me you don't know. Different to the child with the smiling photos. Made some decisions, some wrong, some right. Now strangers call my number when I'm sleeping.
Hello, everybody. My name is John Wee, Community Manager at Santa Monica Studio. This is the Art Book Commentary. So we're going to start here with the characters of God of War, starting with our titular character, Kratos. Could you guys talk a little bit about the inception of how the design came about, transitioning to the Norse design?
This took a long time to get to. Like, we know what Kratos looks like, but it was a
Focusing on Atreus, what were some of the challenges of designing, Kratos' son?
I know one of the first things we talked about, I think half this.
Let's focus on Midgard. Really curious, how was this first described to you to begin with, and then translated both as an artwork and then finally in-game?
I think at the beginning of the project, there was a pretty big desire to make the game super realistic, and we had like a really big departure from what the previous God of War games were. And I think when you look at the Kratos designs,
So for Snowmason, I'm really curious to hear about your guys' I guess, process in building this. Did you build the story first, then the artwork, and then how did everything? Looking at Alfheim, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but curious was what came first, the character design or the location of Alfheim, or both in tandem?
the upper.
So looking at Alfheim, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but curious was what came first, the character design or the location of Alfheim, or both in tandem?
The upper left-hand corner image. That right there. Jung?
I did that one actually.
You did that one?
Yeah.
That one right there was the one that spoke most to me, that said like, I don't know what is about that, but the trees growing towards the central light source, like we had a high concept for it.
And speaking of the mountain, let's chat more about it. I'm curious about how you guys made this seem like an imposing force in the background at all times, for a lot of the game.
Well, they drew a pretty cool mountain and we made it in 3D and put it in the background. That sounds simple, but it took a long time to draw a mountain.
The way
Can you chat a little bit about concept-wise, especially with the coloring? I think, how did the colors stand out, especially with all the realms?
the interpretations of Jotunheim in sort of popular entertainment right now kind of have the classic interpretations of the mountains and the blue and gray stone with the snow cap, very Lord of the Rings, right? But there is a reference in the Eddas that talks about the glittering golden fields of Jotunheim, right? And it's the only reference to that. Most of it still supports this concept of giants living inside of a mountain, which I still like the idea of the interior of the mountain stuff, but I
Helheim looks colder than Midgard. Curious what artistic touches in-game artistically you guys added to this to make it seem.
I think it's worth noting that the Jotunheim was very yellow. Midgard is very bluish, grayish, Norse, typical Norse, and this is green. We did come up with a big color script, so like Luke and Corey and a couple of us, we review the game plays in this order, and here's the colors you'll hit. So we don't have 3 green levels in a row, or 2 red ones in a row. And so Helheim just naturally slotted into this green thing. It being cold, it just sort of like fit the bill that we'd go sort of greenish, real.
How did the concept of the turtle come about, and the turtle home, and maybe the interior as well?
we knew in a conversation I was having. God, this was back when Chris Sutton was here. I had a conversation with him about like we need to do something interesting. Like it's cool to have the interior of her house. We got to do something that's unique, right? That makes it feel like this is a unique house. And I think he said okay, and he grabbed a bunch of people to go in a room, and you guys brainstormed for a while. And when he came out, I think he was thinking about like, oh, okay, well, there's this crazy idea. Then there's a bunch of other ideas. And he's like, I feel pretty good about these ideas. And there was probably a list of like 5 of them. And he was sort of continuing to avoid the conversation of the crazy idea because I think he was even saying, I don't know how the fuck we would do it. And I don't think we have the time. And that was around the time when we were constantly talking about scope, which I think was from year 1 to year 4, that we just nonstop every day was scope, 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 scope.
In terms of character design, anything you guys want to call out that you guys are really proud of from the iterations here?
Vance,
Yep,
right? That
Vance.
did these Vance Kovacs. Man, his first drawings were like right in the pocket of what this character was supposed to be.
Yeah, he has a great ability to just get like strength and beauty at the same time. Where sometimes it's really easy to go one way or the other.
Yeah,
And I think this character also kind of goes along with our initial idea that the costuming with all our characters felt like they were handmade. They weren't
yeah.
super ornate. But I think with this character too, we wanted that connection to nature, and I think Vance also really got that really well. Yeah, even his loose sketches, there's so much gesture and life in them. It's,
Her characters are infuriating people who live in cold climates. She doesn't like nobody wears enough clothes in the game apparently, except they're gods, or they're like local. She's a witch, right? So she's able to make her feet not feel cold. There is a dude called the Iceman who ascended a mountain in his shorts with no shoes.
So we're at the Draugrs, we're at the enemies of God of War. Could you chat about how many iterations the Draugrs went through? Anything you guys want to call out again here?
I feel like they went on for years.
There was a lot. Basically, we're kind of getting the equivalent of what the Skellies were in the old game. We knew this character would probably be one of our big like multiplicity characters that we see throughout. So exploring what that is. And Corey, again, I think like you were talking about, you didn't want to do the average witch for the previous character. Same thing with this. You kind of push us away from doing like the zombie kind of aspect. So the idea with these characters is their spirits are so fierce that they actually. Elves are always a super interesting character. I think they're more than humans, but they're not as elevated as gods. So they kind of have this really unique middle space, which I think gives us a lot of creative opportunity. This kind of what you're looking at here kind of shows like the early inception of them. Some pieces that Yefim did where they were going to be more kind of insect kind of inspired, and then kind of more the final one we went to where they're more humanoid. These are 2 characters I think, again, we didn't want like their costuming and their design to just be like man-made, so you see a lot of natural elements in them. This is something that'd be great to kind of. There's a whole story behind these guys, I feel.
So looking at the Revenant, just curious about the story behind the design with the lantern, the hay, all the elements that go into it.
I think this one was really like make something different and unique that feels like it's not the witch that you've seen before in different games. So it was a lot of sketching by Yefim again.
Yeah.
Of just trying to come up with something that feels unique. I feel a lot like Bloodborne also came out like right at the time when we started designing
Yeah, that was frustrating as hell. Because honestly,
Yeah, a lot
this
of
came.
those
3 had
The
Absolutely.
initial thing with the rake came from an etching that I saw about, sort of medieval Europe when they talked about the plague. They called it pestilence or pesta,
Yeah.
right? And they had it was personified as this like scary old woman with a rake that would come into your village. And
For these Valkyrie artwork, I'm just really curious about the inspiration, especially it seems like fallen heroes, fallen like soldiers almost. What were some of the inspirational designs that you guys took?
These are done by Justin Sweet and Vance Kovacs, and this is actually one of my more favorite characters in the game. I really love what they did. Again, inspiration came from Corey. I think again, kind of playing against type, he had the idea about the harness as the wings, not going with the natural
oh yeah,
set of wings.
so that it's more like a plane captain getting their wings. Like
Yeah.
there's a sort of a graduation. Like you become the shield maiden, the strong warrior, and what you get out of that is the physical wings.
Any emotions, characteristics that you feel successfully translated in your artwork here?
This was another one kind of take on a classic Norse creature, the trolls. We knew early on we kind of wanted to do like variations, like we have a fire and an ice, a stone troll, and kind of trying to reflect that in this race. One thing I did like again is giving the layers to the character. So even in the first E3 trailer in 2016. He's coming at Kratos, and you can even hear him speaking. So you can tell they've got their background of their own languages, and so that even we don't understand, but it kind of adds to the character that way. Um,
Board of discussions about how you guys came to the final designs of the dragons.
Yeah, this was another early design. I think we knew we wanted dragons. It was one thing we showed in the first E3 trailer. Here's some sketches by Steven, some pieces by Justin Sweet. And the idea was that this dragon lived in the mountains, so we were kind of pulling a lot from that. It's thinking like his skin is paler now that he hasn't, or she hasn't been outside. And
Focusing on the weapons, just overall, like what were some of kind of the core values or foundations that you guys were starting with in building these weapons?
for me, it was that the blades are such a part of Kratos. He's like the character, so making this new weapon, the axe, was a big deal. Trying to make something that could kind of carry that same weight. And at the first E3, I remember being at E3 with the team, and people responded really well to it, and that was kind of like a sigh of relief. I think that has some nice things. Again, this is one of the things we tried to bring to.
Everybody, thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you to Dark Horse. Thank you to our VizDev team. And thank you guys for listening to this whole commentary.
Thank you to our entire art team.
And our art team.
Yeah,
Thank you to our
it was a
entire
group effort.
art team. And
In production for working with us.
Yes,
And allowing us to endlessly
putting up with the
perfect.
craziness. Honestly, it's thank you to every single person on this team and every significant other who has suffered through the insane schedule that we've had throughout all of this. We love you all, and we thank you. Hopefully, it shall be worth it.